It's day 78. It's also July 21st, 2019, and we're in Utah at the Flaming Gorge National Recreation Area.
You ever wake up in the morning and ask yourself, what am I doing? And more importantly, why? Yeah, me too. Hi, my name's Craig, and this is my story. A story about life. Life out there. For visuals while listening, search Life Out There on your favorite social media platform or use the links in the podcast description.
From our stop at Henry Unit Number 1, we wouldn't get far. Just past McKinnon, Wyoming, when I saw a sign for Flaming Gorge National Recreation Area. And yup, another scenic byway. The Flaming Gorge Utah Scenic Byway. So guess who dropped down into Utah for a look-see? The Flaming Gorge National Recreation Area actually begins in Sweetwater County, Wyoming. The winding drive, filled with steep inclines, declines, and sharp turns, crosses into Utah and through some of the country's richest fossil beds. And, let me just say, this drive, on a 104-degree July day, is not for the faint of heart when traversing it in a 32-foot rig and towing a car. We would make many stops on this hot July afternoon, both making the climb and coming back down, constantly watching temperature gauges and learning the best balance between gearing down versus braking. And actually seeing smoke come off your rear brakes? Well, that can definitely suck the fun out of any drive. Point being, take your time on this one. And once you've had a gander at this scenery, you'll understand that taking your time is not an issue. In fact, it's recommended. This truly is a breathtakingly beautiful piece of the country. For me, almost overwhelming. You see, I'm a West Coast guy, born and raised. From the early days in Central California to my time in the Pacific Northwest, I know what natural beauty is. The raw beauty of staring out into and across the Pacific Ocean on a summer night, or even a blustery winter day, can be mesmerizing in the Pacific Northwest. The smell of the fir trees, the cedar on a rainy winter morning, can somehow lure you into most anything. Another 30 minutes on that walk, or even pushing another few miles up that logging road to take in just a bit more of what might be around the next bend. Even when it ends with sliding down into muddy ruts, high-centering your pickup and spending an afternoon in the mud getting unstuck. But that's a story for another time. What's striking to me here is that all of these same sensations are happening all at once, but in a very different place. Instead of gazing out over the vastness of the Pacific Ocean, I'm gazing out over the vastness of billions of years of evolution. And I can see it all. The ocean buries things. It covers them up. And unless you've donned a scuba diving suit and gone down for a look yourself, well, you're left to your imagination and the movies as to what those ebbing tides might hold and how they've dealt with these billion or so years of geological shifts. But here, Mother Nature and the Earth have given us a wide-open, unobstructed view of what's taken place here. All you have to do is come look at it. You'll see what I mean. First up, the Flaming Gorge National Recreation Area itself spans the northeast corner of Utah and the southwest corner of Wyoming. We started just south of I-80 between Green River and Rock Springs in Wyoming. If you drive the scenic byway in its entirety, which we did, This 150-mile drive will take you through some of the most incredible scenery, I promise, you will ever look at. The 3 or 4 hours we spent trekking through here took us through the expansive high desert of the area, into, up, down, and through the fossil beds. It included a drive along the 90-mile Flaming Gorge Reservoir, the centerpiece of the recreational area, and then some more wide-open high desert before cresting the rugged Uinta Mountains of Utah and through the stunning alpine forests and ancient native hunting grounds. All this before bringing us down the other side and into the Uinta Basin and a place called Vernal, Utah. And a quick side note, anyone out there interested in doing some camping in the area, RV or not, you'll have over 40 campgrounds to choose from, hosting over 700 individual campsites and 27 group sites, all spread over nearly 91 water miles with a whopping 360 miles of shoreline. And that's just those around the Flaming Gorge Reservoir. Then fold in countless mountain retreats. There's plenty of room up here for everyone. There's also the opportunity to set up primitive camping sites for those wishing a more secluded adventure during their river rafting adventures or fishing trips out onto the reservoir. The Flaming Gorge Reservoir is known for its blue ribbon trout fishing opportunities. And ice fishing? Well, if that's your thing, they've got you covered here too. It's a year-round deal up here. We would end our day at the Fossil Valley RV Park in Vernal. We rolled down out of the mountains, pulled off on the side of the road searching nearest RV park with the Google lady and my phone, and, thankfully, she pointed us to the folks at the Fossil Valley RV Park. An awesome little park tucked in off the main road and under a lush canopy of mature shade trees, which were definitely a welcome sight after our hot, sweaty afternoon coming down out of the Flaming Gorge. Now, finally, fully shaded, plugged in, the AC cranked, I'd hit the showers for one of the best hot showers I could remember, and then relaxing for the evening looking out over the ball fields of the neighboring schoolyard, along with, you guessed it, tapping away on the laptop learning about this place we had just trekked through. So much to unpack here, not even sure where to start. As mentioned, we entered the gorge in Wyoming, then crossed into Utah where we would drive through the community of Manila, a quiet little place of just over 300 folks. While there is mining activity in the area, most of the town's revenue these days is generated based on its strategic location in relation to the Flaming Gorge. Depending on which direction you're traveling, Manila is probably your last stop before trekking into the gorge, or your first stop when coming up out of it. I was curious about a name like Manila up here in Utah, and it was interesting to learn that the town was settled in 1898, which coincided with the capture of Manila in the Philippines during the Spanish-American War. U.S. naval vessels would glide into Manila Bay under cover of darkness, engage with the Spanish Pacific Squadron in the first military engagement of the war, and win a decisive victory for the U.S. This naval victory in the Pacific Ocean inspired the naming of this quiet little community in Utah, some 7,500 miles away on a different continent. Reading this reminded me of the small fishing village in Oregon we had been through, called Garibaldi, named for an Italian officer that fought around the globe but never even set foot in the United States, let alone a place called Oregon, and yet the town bears his name. Inspiration, it seems, can come from anywhere. Oh yeah, and when you see the name Dutch John on a sign and drive through the community of some 200 folks or so, well, you gotta Google that, right? Dutch John? His real name was John Hanselena, a German immigrant that arrived in the area in the 1850s. I cannot even imagine the sense of adventure and tenacity this German immigrant must have packed on that boat with him. Having landed on the east coast of the United States with nothing but dreams and ambition, he he somehow made his way over 2,000 miles west, where he would find and call this northwestern corner of Utah home. He'd set up shop and make it his mission to provide quality horses to the immigrants and railway workers passing through the area. His larger-than-life personality and thick German accent would eventually lead to his nickname, Dutch John, which apparently for the time was an affectionate reference to how difficult he could be to understand sometimes. Over time, the area in which he operated would become known as Dutch John Flat, or Dutch John Bench. It would be some century later when in 1957 the United States Bureau of Reclamation constructed the Flaming Gorge Dam. The area known as Dutch John would be used to house workers involved in the dam's construction, and at its peak, Dutch John would house over 3,500 residents during the construction of that dam. Upon completion of the dam in 1964, the community continued to be home to the dam maintenance and operations personnel, as well as employees of the U.S. Forest Service and the Utah State Division of Wildlife Resources. Throughout this period, the area's land and housing would continue to be owned by the United States Bureau of Reclamation until 1998, when the assets were sold to individual landowners in the area and privatized. It would not be until 2015 when Utah State Legislature, in an effort to preserve the area's history and legacy, would grant a charter allowing the area to incorporate as the town of Dutch John, Utah. That's a pretty twisty-turny way for a German immigrant in the 1850s to trek some 5,000 or 6,000 miles around the globe, find a spot in Utah, and leave his mark as a Dutchman. Seems to me German John would have sounded just as good, but hey, Dutch John? I guess that has a ring to it. And so what about this place called Flaming Gorge? Well, it was first dubbed Flaming Gorge in 1869 when the Powell expedition made their way down the Green River from Wyoming and into Utah. Powell was struck by the spectacular red sandstone cliffs that surrounded this part of the river. The explosive red hues illuminated the entire gorge at sunset, creating a display that today's CGI technology would be hard-pressed to reproduce. No one knew at the time that as Powell uttered the words, Flaming Gorge, that some 150 years later, 2.5 million people each year would traverse the globe for a look at this incredible landscape and the peek into history it provides. Those members of the Powell expedition also had not a clue that they had stumbled into one of the North American continent's richest fossil beds. Geologists and paleontologists alike have explored and studied this area relentlessly for decades. As recently as 2002, dinosaur tracks have been uncovered here in the gorge that document the fact that some 150 to 180 million years ago, Jurassic creatures wandered the area right here, where I'm standing today. And then there's the jewel, the centerpiece of this national recreation area, Flaming Gorge Reservoir. The dam's construction, completed in 1964, was originally planned for flood control and water reclamation, but during the construction and in the years following, a ton was learned about how this 90-mile-long reservoir could serve purposes well beyond those originally intended, including power generation. I'm not even going to try to explain how this happened. Instead, let's have a look and a listen to the Bureau of Reclamation video explaining all there is to know about the Flaming Gorge Dam and the reservoir it created.
Hi, welcome to Flaming Gorge Dam and Reservoir. My name's Jessie and I'm going to be your tour guide today. We'll start right here where we can see a small percentage of Flaming Gorge Reservoir. We actually have 375 miles of shoreline and we stretch back 91 miles. On an average year, we have about 123 trillion gallons of water in our reservoir. The deepest spot in our reservoir is right here in front of our dam, where we're usually about 440 feet deep. The construction of our dam was a 7-year process, and we worked under 3 different presidents. We were authorized in 1957 by President Eisenhower. In 1963, JFK turned on our first generator. And in 1964, we were dedicated by Lady Bird Johnson. Now we'll move up to our walkway where we can get a great view of our gantry crane. This large green structure is our gantry crane. We use that when we do maintenance on our emergency shutoff gates. We plug it in and it rolls right along those tracks all the way out to the center of our dam. However, one thing that's really nice about our gantry crane is we don't have to block up any traffic when we do our maintenance. If you look right in between the tracks, you'll notice there's a large opening. Cars can actually drive right through the center of our gantry crane while we're doing our maintenance. On our gantry crane, we have a 15-ton hoist and a 70-ton hoist. Those hoists will come down and go into the gatehouses and pick up those emergency shutoff gates and bring them all the way back here so we can do any necessary maintenance. We usually do things like cleaning off the algae, throwing on a fresh coat of paint, that sort of thing. And now we'll head over to our River Vista area. From our River Vista area, you have a beautiful view of our lovely Green River. As you can tell, it gets its name from that brilliant green coloring. That color comes from the lime and algae and mineral deposits on the bottom of the river. When we first built our dam here, the Green River at this point wasn't green at all. In fact, it ran brown and muddy. It was green up at its source up in the Wind River Mountains, this side of the Tetons, but by the time the water got all the way down to us, it had collected a lot of mud and silt and that sort of thing. However, after we built our dam and blocked all that water up in our reservoir, all of that mud naturally deposits somewhere between 50 and 60 miles back into our reservoir. So by the time the water gets all the way to the dam, it comes out nice and clear and we can really see that brilliant green color shining through. After we got that nice, clean, clear water, we started stocking some fish down in our river. We're really pretty proud of our fish here. We are a blue ribbon trout fishery. We have about 10,000 fish per mile for the first 5 miles, then we drop down a little bit after that. One of the most popular views on our tour is the overlook of the dam area. From here you can see 455 feet of our dam. Our dam is actually 502 feet tall. And just to give you a little estimate of how long we are, if you were to take the Empire State Building, lay it on its side, put a little curve in it like our dam has, it would reach all the way from canyon wall to canyon wall. We are as long as the Empire State Building is tall. We get water through our dam in 3 different ways. Our first and primary way, and the way we generate our electricity up here, is through what we call penstock tubes. Those are large tubes which run down the center of the dam. The water comes in from the reservoir side, it goes down those tubes. Once it gets to the bottom, it hits a large fan-like structure called a turbine. The pressure of the water causes that turbine to spin. Our other 2 ways we get water through our dam are what we call bypass systems. We use those when we need to bypass our generators for some reason, or mainly on years of excess water when we just need to get more water through our dam than our generators can handle. The first of those 2 ways are what we call hollow jet valves. It's a pretty neat show when we open those tubes up all the way. They can shoot water out almost 150 feet. Those 2 little tubes shoot out about 4,000 cubic feet per second of water. Our third way we get water through our dam is what we call a spillway. It's a large concrete structure that works a lot like a bathtub overflow. We lift up the gates and the water runs off the top of the reservoir. It runs through a 675-foot tunnel down to our river level. That spillway, when open all the way, can release somewhere between 28 and 30,000 cubic feet per second of water. This is the top of our selective withdrawal system. A selective withdrawal system is a series of gates which run in front of our penstock tube openings. They allow us to choose the depth and temperature of water we take from our reservoir and put down into our river. With these, we're able to maintain our river very consistently between 52 and 55 degrees at all times, and that's just perfect for our fish population. Now that we've seen our selective withdrawal system, let's go ahead and go down to our generator room. We've now come down 422 feet inside our dam to our power plant level. Let's go take a look at our generators. We're now in our generator room. We have 3 generators here at Flaming Gorge Dam. They're each 50 megawatt generators. They can each supply enough residential power for 70,000 people. After the power leaves our generators, it comes here to our transformers, where it gets stepped up from 11.5 kilovolts to 138 kilovolts. It then goes to our switchyard, where it gets distributed to all of our power customers. The original purpose of Flaming Gorge Dam was not power production. However, the revenue generated from our power production allowed us to not only pay for the construction of our dam, but it continues to provide the funds necessary for annual operation and maintenance, enabling us to be self-sufficient. The original purpose of Flaming Gorge Dam was water storage, irrigation, and flood control. In addition to that, it provides many other benefits, such as recreation on our reservoir and on our river. I hope you've enjoyed your tour of Flaming Gorge Dam today. Thank you for visiting our recreation area. If you have any more questions, please visit the people inside of our visitor center. Thank you.
And not surprisingly, this area, like so many throughout this part of the country, would see a good deal of bloodshed in wars with the local Native Americans in the early years. Later years brought strong ranching and farming communities. Settlers ingeniously figured out irrigation systems that are in use to this day, helping them to remain self-sufficient in their remote corner of the state. They would experience their first oil boom in 1948, and mining soon followed. You won't find a ton of folks around here today, some 10,000 or so, but you will find a great spot to stock up on supplies and handle any maintenance or repair needs when headed into or out of this part of the country. And of course, if you're like me, a fast food fix or a good steak dinner doesn't hurt either. And it's all within walking distance from our base camp at the Fossil Valley RV Park. Another thing you'll figure out very quickly is that here in Vernal, and the area in general, it's all about dinosaurs. They're everywhere, starting with the 30-foot-tall happy pink dinosaur welcoming you to Vernal and proclaiming it Utah's dinosaur land. This town truly has embraced the gold mine of fossils that surround them, the scenic wonder of the Uinta Mountains in that flaming gorge just above them, and just a few miles east, you'll find Dinasaur National Monument, which spans over 200,000 acres and straddles the border between Utah and Colorado. The monument is home to thousands of fossilized bones and footprints documenting the presence of these prehistoric creatures in the area some hundreds of millions of years ago. On the Utah side of the park, you can visit the Quarry Visitor Center, which is home to the world-famous Wall of Bones. This refurbished ancient rock houses over 1,500 fossilized bones and is one of only a few places on the planet where you can actually touch the bone of a dinosaur that lived here where you're standing some 150 million years ago. On the Colorado side, you can visit the Canyon Visitor Center, which offers exhibits of its own and welcomes you to the Colorado prehistoric area. You can drive through the area and enjoy from your car, or, if you're more inclined, there are tons of hiking and biking trails throughout the monument, allowing for an up-close and personal look. In the past 24 hours, we've spent the night alongside a historic trail traversed by tens of thousands that risk everything to trek west in search of a better life. We've spent a few hours in the shadow of a rock mountainside revealing literally millions of years of geological evolution, and in the process, creating natural resources within the planet that humans have spent a couple hundred years figuring out how to tap into and use to move mankind forward in ways far beyond those of any other time in the history of humans on the planet. And then we trekked through a gorge cut into the earth some 150 million years ago, and even parked alongside an ancient hunting ground of the indigenous people that arrived in this part of the country some 30,000 years or so before those European ancestors of mine did. And then, rolling down out of that place and into one where I could plug in, turn on an air conditioner, shower up, and then scour the internet, learning all I could about all that history that we had just passed through. Whew. That's a lot. Sitting here this evening, I'm realizing that while my perspectives and outlook began a massive shift on that spring day pulling out of the driveway on B Street in Tacoma. But with each mile, each piece of history we pass through, those perspectives continue to shift, to grow, to evolve. Life is relative. How you live it is relative. It's relative to what we know. And imagining what life was like before a time when I simply pulled a cord out of the rear of an RV, plugged it into an outlet, flipped a switch that magically transforms a 104-degree afternoon into a 65-degree evening, comfortable, cool, and a laptop that allows me to scour the internet teaching me about all that passed before. It's nutty. It's mind-bending. It's super cool. And I'm grateful that I live in a time with these resources and comforts at my fingertips. And with all this in mind, we're going to get up tomorrow morning, unplug, and drive east again. What's next? A place called Rangeley, Colorado. I wonder what we'll learn there.
Turns out, this thing called life comes with a lot of rules. Maybe it's time to break a few. Because you can. No, seriously, you can.